and welcome to this week's edition of System Override. We have got an episode for you today. We're starting to see some of those great leaders think back on maybe what they said a year ago and how AI was going to get rid of all of the frontline workers and instead maybe that's not quite the action we're going to see. Humans have risen up and started to show our resiliency and how we can evolve alongside or ahead of AI. But before we get there, hey Bri, how was your week?
It was a good and busy week. We had lots on the go. And then the stampede kicked off, which was great. Except I'm going to disclose right now because if anyone's watching the video, they're going to be like, what's wrong with your face? So stampede has kicked off, which is excellent. And we love it. But what I did do last night, because what's very popular during stampede and summer in Calgary in general, are those little friggin' scooters like getting around. And so we decided we would take the scooters home last night. And my hat was gonna blow off, so I took my hand off to try to grab my hat, and it just like jackknifed and just like it was like literally just like snap closed, and I ate it hard on the road. So if you're like, what is wrong with your mouth? And did you get some weird lip filler done? No, I did not. But we're a little bruised and battered but the cowboy hat really saved me. Like
Right.
useful, like I'm so glad I saved my hat because it saved me because it was like took most of the impact and then we just had a bit of a, you know, down the pavement. Right? I feel like win. What a win. Never getting
It
on
would
those
be
stupid scooters
a weird
again.
stampede if you didn't have your front teeth.
Right? I feel like it all would probably go during Stampede. You could make it work. But yeah, safety tip, don't ever take your hand off one of those things. They will not stay steady. They will just completely collapse.
It is a good first day of stampede
Right?
story. And I was with her, and so she wasn't intoxicated. So this was
Yeah.
actually
This was just
an
like
involuntary put her hand on top of her head. That's just what we do with cowboy hats. We make sure that we stop them from blowing off our
the hip
heads.
for the hat, like the vibe.
Yeah, because the hats are too expensive. Don't want them crushed
Yeah,
on
it
the
was a new
street.
hat. I really like that hat.
It is really nice. It's a really great hat. But anyways, so yeah, we're gonna have one heck of a week. For those of you who've never been to Stampede, as Calgarians, we welcome you to come. I could just see the the people descending on the city effectively yesterday.
Mhm.
The parade is going on as we speak because we obviously tape on Fridays and release on Mondays. But yeah, it's going to be quite a time. And in the corporate world,
It's a
it's like
whole
a marathon.
yeah,
You got to
marathon.
learn to pace yourself.
But it is a world-class event, and that is one thing that I always find so
It
cool,
is.
and if we have friends from, other countries come, and, like, I've been to Oktoberfest, it feels, like, exactly as big, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or bigger, to be honest, like, of, like, all of the stuff it's grown so much over the years, it's such a music festival now, the
So
rodeo, like, it's fun. I know not everyone loves the Stampede, but I love the Stampede
me
because I
too.
think it's just so cool to have the city come together, and a lot of just, like, celebration and excitement and,
Yeah,
like,
we
joy,
celebrate. Yeah, celebrating our heritage and not forgetting where we like the hardworking
Yeah,
people
of the
that
West.
came to a province that had nothing and they just
Why
got
would you
dropped
come
off
here?
on the side of the road and decided to grow crops and create entertainment in the
Try not
way
to
of
die in
rodeo
rusty
and chuck
winters.
wagon. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's great. And we're excited to have this. It's great. Everybody feels good. And when I have people come visit, that's the one thing they always say is they're like, it's so amazing how everybody's so happy and just having a good time. And there's like nobody fighting about stuff. It's just enjoy yourself, meet lots of new people. Even last night, we met lots of new people.
Yep.
And that will be the week. We'll meet lots of people and find out what people are up to. And people are just happy,
Mhm.
which is super nice. On that account, let's just talk a little bit about go back to last week's episode where the big action was personal affirmations, something that we really do take seriously and have really tried to put into our daily routine. I know that last time you shared a cool tidbit of how you kind of put those affirmations into your passwords so that you're always typing them and remembering them. Any other findings or thoughts on affirmations since we made this an action for our listeners?
I think the main thing was, like, I love not just the I feel like people hear affirmations and they think it feels very woohoo maybe sometimes,
Yeah.
but, like, it's I love the neuroscience behind all of these things and connecting it because the stories you tell yourself and the language and the words that you use for yourself truly do shape your reality because they
Mm,
form your foundation of what you move towards, your belief system, and there is something to repetition in your brain and repeating that to yourself to actually have it become something meaningful to you. So I think I love them for all of the reasons. I mean, the woohoo was enough
mm,
for me, but I love the fascination of the tie to the neuroscience. And I think it's really cool to see because obviously someone who loves, you know, any of that kind of space, I'm like very interested in always looking at these articles or like the new news coming out for it. And I just love how there's been a lot on neuroscience and kind of just really affirming things that just felt very belief focused in the past. And then showing how there has such a tie to, actual science behind it and how it works. And then the coolest thing that I love is like you see actually how this was so prevalent in early day cultures and it was more about beliefs and spirituality or just like ritual with the older cultures, but because they had like, if they were around for these, hundreds of thousands of years and they just innately discovered this way of operating. And I think in being kind of like, the new age, we lost a bunch of that and then it felt too woohoo, but you kind of realized there was a reason behind all of it and why humanity leaned into these things and why humanity did this because it helped us operate at a higher level. And so I love that it's all kind of connecting now, like of like this isn't just a woo-woo thing. Here's actually the science, and here's actually the principles that have been embedded in human foundation for a very long time, and we just kind of lost our way from them.
mm. Yeah, I think that's really cool. I remember when I first started using affirmations myself, and like you could start, as you kind of repeat them and start to really embrace them, how you can feel it actually in your heart, right? There's that connection between your brain and your emotional, and so like those words become just part of who you are, and that science of how you can change the fibers and the way that your brain is thinking to also, you know, lead for your emotional side. And when you actually truly believe something, it's just how you act. You don't have to think about it. It's just the way you now present yourself. And we know how important that is, you know, obviously always in our world to be more authentic to who we are and what we believe in, but also to like how you get recognized, how people see you at work, how people see you in your personal friendships and relationships, and making sure that they really are seeing the things that you truly believe in about
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. I love
Yeah, it's
that.
very cool. Very cool. Okay, so we got some cool stories today. As I mentioned, we're going to talk lots about the human side of AI again. Trying to bring home again that AI is a tool that is actually enhancing the human experience and humans' capability to evolve. And the first one is our the CEO of AWS, Matt Garman, had said, a while ago that, he was going to get, they're going to lay off a whole bunch of 11,000 interns. They were going to get rid of 600,000 factory workers because they were going to be able to do it all with robots. And he was on a podcast last week that he said, "Whoa, we're holding back. That was the dumbest idea ever." Because the interns have, some great skills in this area. They actually are really evolving quickly, using the AI maybe and being much more fluent in it. And so, he kind of walked himself back. And so what did you think about this story and what he had to say and I think, good on him for, pivoting, away from what they thought maybe a year ago.
I really leaned in and liked, like, I think we don't know I think the one thing that we do know is true is AI has an immense capability to enhance our work and potentially to optimize our work. Now, I think we talk a lot about the cutting of jobs, but that's just the one side of the coin because as we know with all new times, new tech, new things becomes new jobs. So I think it's like if we just isolate it, like if we just say table stakes, new jobs will be created with AI. There will be
Yeah.
new types of jobs. So I don't think the overall bandwidth of jobs or availability for people to have jobs will overall lessen. Like I think everyone will be able to have a job in the future of AI. It's more just it'll be a displacement of that. But because we're in kind of the shrink piece now, in the sense of, like, everyone's just talking about displacement and not about the new in the holistic picture of it, but let's just focus isolated on the picture of displacement. I I like that the narrative, like, I'm tired of it just being, like, trying to point fingers at different segments of the workforce
Mm,
population and being like, "It's you! You're screwed!" Like, "New grads, you're screwed," or "You middle managers, you're screwed." And just, like, creating these very fear-based conversations. Like, I think if we distill this down into something very brass tacks, it's that there is a lot of opportunity here for this technology to influence the way that we work. Now, in a displacement scenario, could that mean some jobs are less relevant in an AI space? Absolutely. But does that mean that some jobs will now be created as a result of it, or just the job nature itself will shift? The job will still exist, but maybe you won't need more people. So it's less of like the job, but maybe less people are required for certain ones to execute it or whichever. But the one thing I liked was just saying, like, it's not any one level or any type of one segment of the workforce population in my mind. Like, everyone will have the opportunity to use this. And then just within the functions of the company, some functions it might be more enhanced by AI, some functions might be less enhanced by AI or like work with it differently. And so I like that this feels like a change in the conversation. I wish we would get away from this narrative because I feel like everyone's, or maybe it's just the way the news is spinning it, you know? It's still being this very like black and white camp of like, I'm firing everyone, or like, you're an idiot. We're keeping all our people. Like, it feels like a bit of a narrative tension like that, which I don't love. But I do love that we're starting to at least have a more, like a more nuanced conversation around it, or we're seeing more perspectives coming out in the news that aren't just like losing jobs, which is all we saw for a while. And now it's like, no, we're creating, or, and I think what everyone should take away from this is just like, we don't totally know yet, but what we do know is there's opportunity here to move into it. And the best thing to do is just like really get versed on how AI works with your role and what you're doing. You know, it's like, how can you leverage AI to do it better, cheaper, faster, smarter? Because I think the next evolution is just like, how do we get rid of this concept of a 40-hour work week as far as like time has to equate to value?
yeah.
Because I think that's the biggest opportunity I see is you can do more for more with it because your time doesn't have to equate to value anymore. And like you can keep people doing the same level of outputs for less time and we can have more quality of life that way. But there's probably also a benefit where you can keep a reasonable work hours and also like get more out of it, you know? So that's kind of where my head was going.
And I think that's kind of the key message that Matt made in this article and on the podcast was like they've actually hired the most engineers that they've had ever at AWS right now. But that because they can actually do more, ship more with those engineers, because they can use AI beside them, and their code goes out in a much, you know, better status. It doesn't have as many issues, right? They don't have it's not hard to fix because it's being, written really effectively or QA'd faster so that it gets, it makes sure that it is really strong code when it goes
Hmm.
out into market, which then shrinks some of the cost on just the number of months it used to take to actually go through all the iterations of QA, and it would be months,
Yeah.
for some of that AWS code. Well, and lots of big tech companies that, they're in a place where they can't have breakage,
Yeah.
and so they have to make sure it's pretty much perfect before they deploy it to customers. So
Yeah.
I think it's a really good news story. I hope that we continue to see more leaders across different segments, not just tech, that
Hmm.
really come out with saying, "Hey, you know what? We don't have all the answers, but we really are focused on how can we help, you know, make the things that are most important to our humans come to reality by using AI as a tool with them." And I think like one of those is like, do you all have to work 40-hour work weeks? Like so many people are so held
Tied.
on to that 40-hour time-bound work week, even if they thought in their mind that they're like, "Well, it's probably only 35 that I actually am doing my job, and 5 hours I'm doing other things or whatever." If you didn't have that 5 hours, but you could take that 5 hours and spend it with your children or your parents or your friends or a hobby or volunteering, you
Yeah.
could do any of those things, but still get paid the same amount of money because the outcome is what is really what the value is. would you do that? And people would actually probably loosen up a lot about this and get us to start thinking about what that possibly could be. And I think that maybe that's what the next year is going to bring us. Because this
Mhm.
last year we moved so fast in the evolution. I think the
Mhm.
evolution is going to slow a little bit because it is become more expensive. We have hit
Mhm.
some
Thresholds.
heights on energy sources and we're going to be constrained in that way of continue to grow. So we're even seeing it like in models where it'll time out and say like you have to wait, which is really an energy play. They just, they can't have as many users on at the same time. Yeah, so I'm excited that I think, if we can get some more leaders talking about that, we really actually will see this evolution that you and I've been talking about for over a year. Right. And I hear lots of other experts starting to talk about it as well. Okay, how about we go over to our friends, the middle manager?
Mhm.
So I was pretty excited. We've heard lots and lots of stories about middle managers and the crunch on them and how we're killing them and the burnout rates, but not this week. This week, it is about the fact that that job can now become one of the most powerful jobs in the company.
Mhm.
And what this one was is a Fortune magazine article came out that said Gardner says that 20% of organizations will cut more of their middle managers by the end of 2026. But we're actually not seeing that emerge. What we're seeing is that managers that don't necessarily rely on reports and schedules and meetings, but actually are working directly with the AI and the humans
Mhm.
are actually seeing great value in the fact that they are getting a lot of capacity back. And then
Mhm.
that allows them to spend more time doing, a lot of the things that humans are great for. And they are able to orchestrate their skills on how they do AI stuff and how they do human stuff. And maybe some of them are going one way or the other. But really interesting information in this one about that middle manager job, which has probably been hardest hit in the last few years with, all the AI. What do
Mhm.
you think about that one?
I loved how, it called out and like I think to middle managers, feeling more comfortable in this is like we talk
Mhm.
a lot about the skills of the future and about AI coming in and what skills are needed, which are judgment and kind of like that experience lens of decision making. And so like I think it's very cool to see in this article, they're calling that out as like, actually, these people are already ready in place and they already have this kind of like judgment. They've already been operating this way. So they're actually one of the best, sets of workforce to actually step into managing teams of AI agents and humans combined and being able to elevate into that position quickly and easily. And so I think that is a really great thing of being able to recognize. And so like I think from a skills perspective or a workforce perspective, like I love that we're starting to see like the shift in this skills based narrative to say, like, wait a minute, we were like, cut them all, they're irrelevant. And now it's like, wait a second, those guys have skills. Those are actually important skills for the future of work. They're actually super valuable. So I think that's a very positive lens that we're seeing come out of this is like we're starting to see that translation of starting to like objectively look at the workforce and say, what skills do each of these segments have and how can we utilize them in a way that makes sense. So I think that's overwhelmingly positive to start to see some of that conversation come out.
And I
What were you
think, yeah, I think one of the messages we want to say to middle managers is that, if you're not thinking about how AI can work with your team outside of, using a model to help you write emails, like we're talking about like how you really optimize AI to help build capacity in your team so your team can do more human-esque, those future skills, like make really critical decisions, debate topics to come up with really good outcomes, those kind of behaviors, then you are gonna feel the pressure. Because I think this is the place where both the AI agent and the employee will live, side by side. And how will you orchestrate that as a middle manager? And are you thinking about your own AI fluency
Yeah.
through this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
And
know what's the
we've talked on sorry,
I was gonna
we've
say
talked
the
on
other
previous meetings or
yeah.
previous things that people think that the company should teach them AI. And we would argue that you should go out and just use it. And that's how you're going to teach yourself how AI can work. Sorry, go ahead, Bree.
I think that's the thing. It's like people don't realize it's not like a traditional, like, there's nothing to really teach, you know? It's like you just have to
Yeah.
use, because it's like it's so basic to interact with it. There's not a lot of like
Hmm.
onboarding required to like get up and running, and it's more just about discovery and like exploring. So yeah, that's a good point. But one other thing I actually think was cool that this article made me think of, which is something that we talk a lot about, is subject matter experts. Like, we talk and
Hmm.
believe a lot around,
Yeah.
and don't love the narrative how in the past, in order to progress up in your career or to progress up in an organizational hierarchy, you had to be a people leader, or had to have teams
Mm.
and people under you. And there's incredible people in organizations who have zero desire to be running teams or people, but who are so valuable to the company, like instrumental sometimes, where the company just cannot run without them, who are subject matter experts, and that how those should be parallel tracks of compensation so that you don't force this narrative of having to only go one path in order to rise to a certain, like, you'll have a ceiling over
Yeah.
you. And so that was one thing I was thinking about this, away from middle management, but more just in what this role is. Cause it's like the people who are going to be very good at this kind of role in orchestrating these, agents and people are people who are going to understand the business very, very well. So
Right.
it's less about, having to be as much on now, if there's people teams, then like, yeah, they'll always need people leadership for people teams. But if you have teams or the ability to elevate, subject matter experts to just run agents, that gives them the ability to use that subject matter expertise, actually get some development in the sense of like organizing, but taking out all of the need to have that like people angle side, which was a huge
Right.
falling down because a lot of the time subject matter experts don't always come with those same kind of skill sets that would complement really strong people leadership. And so I was just thinking that might be a very interesting and cool opportunity as we see this come out. Will we see the rise of the subject matter expert and how they can help, become a new kind of path and compensation track
Hmm.
that is equally as valued as becoming, the director, the VP who has all the workforce organization under them?
I think that's a really good point because if we think about how AI agents or AI tools work alongside a human, they're always going to work best alongside a subject matter expert, right? They don't replace the subject matter expert, they actually just enhance it. It was similar to a conversation I was having with a chief technology officer a couple weeks ago. She said that her team of engineers, software engineers, are shipping more today than they've ever shipped before. But that's because they're experts using a tool that helps them
Mhm.
the output, right?
Yeah.
If they weren't experts and they were, doing, trying to do something that they're not good at, the AI doesn't make them better at that thing, particularly if it's the human side
Yeah.
of how you lead people or how you communicate or those things, how you make the decisions. If those aren't your areas of expertise, the AI can't do it. Yeah, that's a great point. I can hardly wait to find a story one day when that is the
Right?
headline and it's not just us saying it anymore.
I don't mind because I love that it's like we can time our podcast and then to when we see things come up in the news, it's like, man, we can start to make some little trends to be like,
That's
you heard
right.
it first, like,
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. We've been talking about the subject matter expert because in my leadership career, that always made me sad that people who were so good
I
at
know.
something often just got left behind because the hierarchy doesn't promote them or see them as more valuable than a middle manager type of a leader.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, third story for today is the AI fluency gap is now a talent retention glitch. So I don't know how the HR team didn't see this one coming, but as we've mentioned many times before, AI is not something that you just get from being taught it. Some people waiting around to be taught it. Instead, people are using it, figuring out how to use agents in their day-to-day lives, figuring out how to bolster apps and different tech solutions by adding AI into the solution, their fluency and their ability to use the tool is actually outpacing companies that are saying, "Hey, go use Copilot or Gemini and they can, help you write stuff better." And now that entry level job maybe has your most AI fluent people in it, and you certainly don't want to be releasing them out into the unemployment ecosystem. And so, what are you thinking about what we're hearing here on this story?
I was curious. I was wondering if there was a demographic attached to this, if it was more the younger generation who was like making these decisions. But I think it's very interesting. And I think it's not surprising in the sense of like, people, who have very strong values base tied to like their own like decision making around where they want to work. And also like wanting, I don't know if this comes from security, in the sense of like, I don't want to be left behind and like a dinosaur that's going to become the next blockbuster and just like not see the tides, and just disappear. Or if it's just like people who are like highly motivated and is this considered some of your top talent. Like they're the first movers, they very much got into AI, they can very much see what it's capable of. And so is this breeding from like, I want security because I want to know that you're staying in front of it? Or is it coming more from like, I'm a first mover, I can see the opportunity here, and your lack of ability to see the opportunity is frustrating me, and I'm going to go somewhere that I feel has more potential or aligns more with, what excites me and helps me, contribute to an organization. I want to be able to move at my top potential, and I know AI is a part of me being at my top potential, and I don't want to work in this old school way. And so I just had more questions, I would say, than anything in looking at this title of like what's driving behind it. But I do think it's something very interesting and one of those unintended kind of consequences for companies to realize this could actually be a retention maker for you. And that's what these early insights are showing is there actually are some trends and insights around that. And so if that is the case, does that help propel them more on some of these AI business cases if they've been more on the lagging side? What did you think?
Yeah, I think that in the white paper that the University of Phoenix put out, I think that you're right. It wasn't necessarily about it being about specific age groups but it was that the people who tended
Mhm.
jump in and teach themselves AI and be more fluent in it tended to
Yeah.
be in more junior roles.
Yeah.
And so the interesting thing for me on that was that how on earth would a company know where their AI fluency sits right now,
Yeah.
right? Because we've seen in our work that we do with League is that the ability to measure any skill in an organization at a real, I would say, unbiased way, meaning that it's not one human making a judgment call over another human's ability to deliver that skill is very low.
Mhm.
And so this is one of those ones because you're not necessarily learning how to
Mhm.
set up agents and build them into the back end of your own working
Mhm.
processes at home. And yet these guys, you could have them, doesn't matter what demographic they're in, but if somebody's sitting down at home and working on that, that skill is very transferable into work.
Mhm.
And so companies can't even really judge who these people are unless they're willing to come to the table with those ideas, which we know sometimes isn't always seen as favorable in organizations. So I think that's an interesting kind of friction point. Companies need these talent now. They can't figure out how to assess them because they don't have a tool to do that unless they call League, and then we can help them with that. But they're it's kind of a circle right
Mhm.
now, and then the people who have the skill aren't necessarily bringing it to their leaders, because they're worried that they're gonna be, you know, they're gonna be seen as wanting to like, get rid of people because the AI might replace them, and there's a lot of fear in that, and I think they were trying to figure out how to communicate this whole kind of ecosystem change in a way where everyone wins. There may be some pain, there might be some friction, but companies are really gonna have to look at that AI skill being something that's very valuable to them now.
Well, I thought it was interesting too because I think it points to something which we know. Like, we know that one of the top reasons people leave an organization is not for pay, but because they want development. And I feel like this isn't development necessarily, but it's the same strain of like they want to know there's a pathway that they can continue to progress down in
Yeah.
terms of recognition or actually having these skills mean something. And so if they have these new skills, they're highly valued skills in the workforce today, and there's no pathway for them to activate that. That is going to be a retention problem, and I think it very much ties to, like, we're seeing people really put values around development, around the ability to progress, around the ability to identify and build a path for themselves within an organization that they're in. Especially maybe newer and depending what stage your career you're at, if you're sunsetting out and ready for retirement, this might not be as applicable to you. But I think anyone who's building, recalibrating, or growing in their career right now, like, you wanna know that it means something. I think that's the thing.
Mhm.
People want to feel tied to the outcomes, they wanna feel tied to the organization, they wanna feel like what they're doing there actually matters, and that's something I think if I was an organization, I would spend some time, at a high level just understanding, like, just our value chain as a business, like, how is the process of our value chain, within the company, but then within our broader market, and where are there opportunities for us to look at this and then share that with employees at a high
Yeah.
level so they can lean in and bring forward ideas, like bring some of that connection to the conversation because I think the biggest thing is a lot of the time, depending on the organization, if you're not in the leadership level, you don't get enough view sight to the macro picture in these large organizations of that value chain to even really know how it works outside of your individual team function or business unit function. And so map that out so people can see it. Like, this is how our business works if you were to put it down into really basics of, like, mechanics. It's like, this is the Ford motor car, and this is, like, how, things flow in and how things flow out, and the kind of inputs that we have. And that, I think, is the biggest opportunity is to start sharing that more with your people so that, like, even if you aren't there today, how do you create them to be champions to then help enable that picture of how AI enables your business. Like, you need to do more framing so that you can bring that macro picture to their attention so that they understand it because most employees will not have line of sight to that. And most leadership, for whatever reason, kind of gatekeeps that. Like, I don't know if that's like you're not past the door to know these things, but I think to everyone's value, like that kind of information is probably the most valuable to democratize within the organization. You don't have to give like secret private information or confidential information, but like just the general concept of those things and where, key focuses are or friction or problem areas, like let them have something to work on.
Think too, what we've heard is leaders and corporations that are willing to kind of go out in front of their teams and say, hey, like, we're not exactly sure where the future is going to go. Here's what we know today. Here's the things that we think are valuable. Ideas are certainly valuable in this kind of transformation. And so if you're someone in the organization and have a really good idea or something that you think could solve a problem, like we're highly encouraging you to bring that information up to those people, like you said, those people who actually hold the keys to the strategy and to the kind of where make the decisions on these kind of things because somebody who doesn't have that AI skill, somebody who isn't playing around with it at home may not have the right or isn't the subject matter expert. Like, I think the one thing that is the coolest on AI is the subject matter experts actually are the best ones to implement or build the agents because they know
Totally.
what their job is. Like, you can't
Yeah.
expect the CEO to go and build the agent that helps the payroll experts do their payroll jobs or accounts receivable, save some time or increase
Mhm.
accuracy and stuff like that, right? Like the CEO can't do that. That's not what they just, even if they understood AI in and out, they are not going to build that agent. They don't even know what the process is, right? Or if they do, then maybe we need to talk to them about what the CEO is supposed to do. But so I think it's really interesting. I think again, all three of our stories today were really about how AI is actually being used much more in as a tool, as something that actually allows humans to do the human things that we are good at. And humans are starting to evolve and be able to spend more time in that thinking space, that decision making, that critical thinking, that debate, the things that maybe got lost in the past couple decades as we spent more time just measuring the tasks and the
Yeah.
time as
Yeah.
opposed to the output. And great things are on the horizon, I think.
Super great things. It's like, I just remember so much of the bullshit metrics put in and like trying to
Yeah.
make time count for something this many hours.
Yeah.
this for this. And it's just like, that doesn't mean anything to the business. Like it's just an overhead expense if we spend X number of time. But like that was a lot of the time the metric used
For
for value.
sure.
It's like we did
Yeah.
this number of things. We did this much time. And it's just like, who cares? Like, what did you actually do? Like, what did you actually move the needle on? And I think this enables the ability to remove that equation and create different kind of metrics around that, where it's less around just like we did something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But I can totally see as being that person who's, all their outcomes, all their compensation was
Yeah.
tied
Yeah.
to those number of widgets, right?
Yeah.
Whatever those things were, right? Do
Yeah.
this many plans, do this many,
Yeah.
open this many accounts, do this many loans. Like that was my whole world. And I can see how people are really nervous about what's going to happen to their compensation or their strong performance
Mhm.
evaluations if that isn't how their people continue to work.
Yeah,
And
but I
so
think
it's a little bit, how do you put the cart before the horse? Because you don't
totally,
know where the horse is going,
or the horse is
right?
gonna but I would say to that, like, I think what I have seen work so well in organizations, but people just don't think to do it, is like you can build that what you want it to be and then propose it. You know what I mean? Like, now is
Exactly.
a time when leaders are looking for answers and they don't have enough bandwidth to be figuring out all the answers. So, you taking the initiative to say, okay, if I know my metrics are going to start changing, well, I'm going to be at the helm of these metrics and I'm going to make sure
Yeah.
that these are the right things. And I'm going to figure out a proposal and start implementing these. And maybe you're doing it in tandem with the existing metrics today because, those aren't going away immediately, but you start showing what's possible and what you could be moving into. And then you drive that narrative. If you're the subject matter expert, if you're the leader in that group, if it was me, I wouldn't be waiting for someone to impose something that may or may not work for me. I would be putting in, what I thought was valuable and start tracking things. And that's the thing that I find is you start doing these things. And in the beginning, everyone's just kind of like, meh, whatever, whatever. And then all of a sudden, the change happens enough that they're just like, oh my God, thank God we have all this. Oh, thank goodness you did this. And it's like, you just have to weather that discomfort of people. Like, it's kind of like being an entrepreneur, nobody believes in it until it works. And then
Yeah.
they're just, like, oh, you're a genius. But before you're a genius, you're a fucking idiot. You know what I mean? So it's like, you got to just be willing to weather that period until you flip over into the next thing.
That's a really good point, right? As soon as it's making money and customers are buying it, you're a genius. It was the same idea you had 6, 8 months ago, but you just weren't making any money on it yet.
I know. That's the
So
thing. That's what I have found fascinating in building a
yeah.
business is it's just like, and so that's like as an entrepreneur, you just have to weather that
Yeah.
discomfort in the early stage because people take proof points as trust building and like all kinds of different proof points. It could be like who is working with you. It could be like all of these different things. And so when you start, you have less resources around you and you have more of that concept. And as you work and work and work and you build these little things, but I found it like mildly hilarious to watch how people's tone changes and how people
Hmm.
react to something then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh yeah, this is this, this is this." And it's like, "Well, when I talked to you months ago, you were nothing." Like I think people have a tendency too to just like shoot little darts at everything if they don't fully trust or understand it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people who genuinely lean in with curiosity. They're usually just like try to point out like, "Pew pew 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 pew, these are all the reasons why that won't work. Pew 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 pew, this is all the reasons why you this is a bad idea." Or pew 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 and like it's just very interesting to me to watch the exact same people like shift their narrative just
Yeah.
because they're seeing you have success as you go towards it. And it's just like, it's a little eye roll, but it's kind of like, it's human nature. So it's like, whatever.
It is human nature. But I think it's really interesting. I think your message to those managers is again, like if you've got a potential solution to the problem or
Yeah.
you can see
Bring
that
it
things are
forward.
changing, like bring those ideas to your leader. What's
Yeah.
the worst thing that could happen
Yeah.
right now? Right? They could tell you that you're crazy
They
and
could
you
just
don't
say no.
know, and then you just go out and prove that I'm
Yeah.
wrong,
Just
you
do it
know?
anyway. I mean, you don't have to like
Exactly.
force your point. Like, just do it on the
Yeah.
side. And that's what I always found was the most powerful thing. It's like, okay, I'm not trying to rock a boat. I'll keep doing what we need to do, but I'm going to do this on the
Yeah.
side. It's
But
no
I'm gonna
harm to
start
you
doing it
guys,
on the
and
side.
I'm
Yeah.
willing to do it. And then all of a sudden, it's just like, oh shit, that's actually
Hmm.
like so
It's
helpful
really
for what
working.
we're
Yeah.
doing. Yeah,
Yeah, I think there's a way more capacity in a manager's time today, like in a senior
yeah,
leader's time today to listen to other people's ideas
yeah,
because right now nobody knows all
yeah,
the answers, right?
yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool. All right. Well, on that note, let's switch over to, we mentioned at the top of the show, lots of celebration. I think that always comes with summer, whether it's Canada celebrating their Canada Day, or whether it's 4th of July and Independence Day in the US this weekend, which is a big one. 250 years is a great milestone. We thought maybe we would do something, celebratory in our big action today, which is really thinking about like what in your career or your life deserves some celebration, and what would you do? What would that be? And how would you celebrate it?
Mhm.
And so any thoughts on what that might be for you, Bri?
Yeah, you know what? I've just been thinking a lot about, I don't know, I think it's like the kids just finished school,
Hmm.
the company we launched our products a little while ago, and I've just maybe it's like because of like, ending and transitions in that way, I've been just been thinking about the process and like how you move along that. And I was just thinking like, man, like I just am grateful for, like, the process, and I feel like who I found myself to be through this past year, like and so, like, I just feel very, like, positive and celebratory over just, like, even the personal development and, like, how I feel inside and who I feel like as a human today and how that has amplified, everything in my life that I'm looking at. It's like I feel like when you really align and like work, and it's not like it's easy work. Sometimes it feels like shit. But you're working through these up levelings of your you're shedding these versions of yourself that don't work for you anymore, and kind of like a snake, just like shedding skins, the whole way. But I feel like I'm just feeling very celebratory about just life in general, like everything feels really bright. Everything feels, even if it's hard, you know what I mean? I think I've just really learned to lean in and to love the process of being, because that is really, at the end of the day, life is just the process of being. And if you don't find joy in the process, you're gonna be like, "Oh shit, I waited until the end, and the end is actually death." There's not a
Yeah.
giant, not all these other things. So, like, it's like and so, yeah, I'm feeling really good about that. I'm feeling really proud of the kids and where they're at. I think it's just, like, feeling like life is great, I'm
Yeah.
celebrating life.
Yeah, I think that's a great one, right? We being able to recognize when you've kind of hit on all those things. Again, doesn't mean it's easy.
No.
Doesn't mean that it's
I actually felt,
that
like,
it's
really
everything's
terrible a lot.
perfect. Right, exactly. But ultimately, the balance and being able to see good things happen
Mhm.
is really the life that is important to you. And
Yeah,
that should be celebrated because we don't tend to take recognition of
yeah,
those things. Yeah. I
yeah,
think that it's kind of similar to me. I would say that, I made a bet 5 years ago to leave the corporate world, leave that, whatever that thing everybody strives for, that big corner office and all the fancy titles and compensation that come with that, and decided to go and learn a whole nother industry.
mhm,
And, last time it hit me that people really think what we're doing is really important and impactful. They really like our backgrounds and how we are building the company. And I went, you know, if you didn't have the guts to take that bet
mhm,
5 years ago, I wouldn't be here today. And it took a lot of guts. And sometimes I forget to celebrate that
yeah.
was something I chose to do, and maybe didn't know exactly why I was making that choice at the time or where we were headed, but I do now.
Well, and I think that's the incredible thing, because I think the through line in both of our stories, and then we're not saying you have to be an entrepreneur to feel these
No.
ways. It's more just we made choices that actively moved towards what was authentic and right for us. And like, you have that deep down feeling of whether
Hmm.
you're in the right place for you, whether this aligns with what your insides are looking for in this life. And that doesn't have to be being an entrepreneur and taking risks in the way that we get excited about. I get not everyone gets
Hmm.
excited about like the kind of things that we do, but I think it's not that it's easy work. It's not that it's like going for comfort. It's more going for truth and truth aligned to yourself. And when you do that, it feels fucking great, even when it feels really, really hard. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
there's just something about feeling really alive in aligning to these moments and knowing like you're where you're supposed to be. Good, bad, or
Yeah.
ugly, you know where you're supposed to be. And so I think for everybody, like that's the biggest thing. It's like, how can you find that? And where you need to be is in the woods, whittling some sticks, then do that. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like it's not like you have to be doing what we're doing. It's more just like finding that out for yourselves, I think is the biggest win that anyone can make in their lives.
And I think that with the big action being like, find that thing that you deserve to celebrate. And once you figure out what that is, that really might be the anchor point to just start deciding what's next for you or what's the most important thing. Because when you truly are honest with yourself about the thing you've done that you want to celebrate, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about that thing. Maybe nobody else thinks it's worth celebrating. That doesn't matter. It's about what do you think's worth celebrating because that thing is the most important to you. Yeah. Very cool. So hopefully, listeners, you take time to do that. Enjoy all the celebrations of the week and the time, and we will be back shortly.
See ya. Hopefully with
Bye.
less beat up face.
I don't know. Maybe I like the new lip filler. We'll see.
I mean, yeah, maybe I'll be like, you gotta give me a good deck in the lips every week just to keep it,
Maybe it is. It is cheaper. I don't know that
Sorry.
as graceful as getting getting lip filler. Okay, see you, Brie.